Welcome back to Brashenomics. This is Heather Moore. And we were just with Howard Choder, who is the tax man specialist, and he was saying that while he's an expert at taxes, redoing his bathroom is something that he would never want to do after having to do that on his own the first time with a DIY project. But luckily, we have Paul Kocharhook now with us, who is the owner of Pathway Design and Construction, has a lot of experience doing bathrooms, remodels, additions, and other products. He's the owner of Pathway Design and Construction, and a company that focuses on environmentally friendly building. Paul, how are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Good. It's nice to have you back. We were talking about asking for help and helping people in the beginning, and you can help people understand a lot of things about their home, and especially things that they probably didn't even realize might be issues to their health, or how sick or not they might be in their own home. And we're going to talk about building materials today.
Yes, I am excited.
So I always find this really interesting to talk about, because I don't think people assume when they move into a new home or have a remodeled home that they'll need to consider, how healthy they'll be inside of it and what actually goes into that process of building and how it will affect their home. So I wanted to, ask you some questions about what kind of materials go into our homes that can affect our health and our environment, and have you talk a little bit about that for us.
Sure. I think initially today we want to look at it in three different areas. Mm-hmm. The first area really being, say, the extraction or the manufacturing mm-hmm. of the materials. So the extraction could be materials that are coming from the earth, whether those be granite or quartz or, say, coal, which is used as a fuel to run factories and right. whatnot. And so what are the implications of some potentials with those? And I think it's, each homeowner has to decide which is what things are important to them in their lifestyle and what they feel they want to put into their projects. Right. So, say with the extraction, we're talking about natural products, and so those are products potentially being mined. Mm-hmm. And how are those affecting the surrounding areas? Whether there could be a spring in the area or a stream, are pollutants now getting into the stream and mm-hmm. affecting the wildlife, and which then down the line, it ends up affecting us as humans if we're consuming them as a food. And then for the manufacturing process, right now we're pulling materials from all over the world. Right. Whether that be China or even here in the United States. And so what are the conditions that the workers are working under? Sometimes for products that are coming overseas, it's not the best working conditions mm-hmm. for the workers in the factories. And so they're having potential health problems because of it. And even here at home, with the introduction of, say, nanotechnology, which is we're finding that in lipsticks and all kinds of different cosmetics. Mm-hmm. We're also seeing it in solar, some of the solar panels that are now being manufactured. And so the nanotechnology is it's a really finite, small particles that are being put together. They're lighter. And they're a lot easier to build these products. So, but there's the potential of affecting the workers. So it's not, so it's not even just thinking about how this product, which might be a natural product, might affect you in your own home. It's how it gets there and who's being affected along the way. Yeah, exactly. And then even beyond that now, so you have your product, mm-hmm. right, in your home, but what's the life expectancy of that product? If we're looking at, as an example, a particle board cabinet, mm-hmm. It may not last as long as something made of plywood. And so now what are the effects of that, say, the particle board cabinet that you put in? Because we're living in a throwaway society now. Right. And so things aren't built for longevity. To last as long. Yeah, I think about the toys that my kids get in a Happy Meal or something, and they pull it out of the bag, and 2 minutes later it's broken. And yeah. What do? You throw it in the garbage. So, really, are the homeowners really trying to get longevity out of the products that they're choosing to minimize the impact, say, on landfills mm-hmm. Down the road? That's always an issue, especially with some of the particle boards that are being made now, where we're adding, because it's made of like sawdust material, in order to get that to stick together, we're creating binders that are glues that are off-gassing and creating VOCs. And so now we take that cabinet and we throw it in the landfill, and it's going to continue to off-gas and continue to decompose and leaching into the soil or off-gassing into the air. And then in some cases, in some areas, they're incinerating the products, and those products are then now going up into the air, into the environment and the surrounding communities, and falling down.
Well, and because they're so disposable, it just happens more and more. And I've seen, particle boards, firsthand in a home, they wear and tear. If water gets into it, it's just done for. It's just, they're not good products to have. So is part of, helping people understand what products are going to last the longest in their home, and do the best in terms of wear and tear. It's part of your counseling process and your education process, then?
Yeah, exactly. We try to at least let the homeowners understand what it is that we're trying
and kind of give them the option.
Yeah, it's ultimately it's their decision, and it's their money. They're spending it, but we're trying to educate them as to what their options are.
What are some products that do have, a long, length of period that they last and are healthy for the environment and for people too? Is there some go-to things?
Some of the products that we like to use are, so if we're talking about flooring products or something, a marmoleum is a
marmoleum.
Yeah, it's like linoleum, like you would see in your grandma's house. It's a natural flooring product, as compared to, say, a vinyl, which we see a lot now. But with the vinyl, you have VOCs and phthalates that are off-gassing.
Yeah.
And
explain to people what you mean when you say off-gassing, because you've explained it to me, but I think it's a term that the average person might not quite understand.
Sure. So the product continues to break down over the course of time, and it's letting off gases into the air, which we in turn are ingesting as we're in our homes.
And it continues. I mean, when you paint a wall, just because you smell it for a couple days doesn't mean that you won't keep getting those same chemicals in the air.
Yeah, exactly. In the case of paint, your VOCs are going to off-gas quite a bit faster.
Yeah.
But there is always the potential that it continues to basically kind of like a half-life. It's going to be smaller and smaller and smaller, but you're still going to be ingesting.
And in going back to these, when you're recommending products for homes that, are better for people to use, I think that just like when you purchase organic or food or things that are better than you, people might assume that these products for the home are more expensive. Is that generally the case, or do you find that you can find comparable things that are about the same for people?
Yeah, no, I think that's a hard question, because there are certain
I can think about it two ways in my head.
There are certain things that do cost more.
Yeah.
And it just is, I think it becomes a priority for each homeowner. But again, it's looking at the whole thing. So
because you can spend more up front
Yep.
on a quality product, or you can buy a cheaper product, but you might be replacing it, way more often.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody was explaining it to me the other day, is thinking of like pens as an example, or disposable pens, where now we buy a box of pens, and when the ink runs out, we throw it in the garbage. Whereas, say, back when they signed the Declaration of Independence, they had one feather pen and a jar of ink, and they just would refill that. They always had the pen, but then they would just refill the jar of ink. So.
Yeah, exactly like that. And you don't realize, most people are so concerned with cost up front that they don't realize how much more they might be spending over time for convenience up front.
Yeah. And there's so many things that are, I think we can talk about it at a later time, because that's such a broad subject.
Well, exactly. And I kind of want to get, we've talked about the products, and excavating things that can pollute your environment and the way that, get down the streams and eventually kind of impact people. But you wanted to talk a little bit about how materials can impact your children. And I would probably say it's not just an impact on your children's health, it's also probably your own too.
It is.
Is it more specific to children though?
Well, it is.
Okay.
I think it's more of a serious issue for our children.
Okay.
And it's kind of this is really one of the reasons that I'm in business, and what I love that I do, because it's trying to minimize the impact on future generations is, to me, is really important. But if we think about our lifestyles now, we're spending about 90% of our time indoors. And during that,
it's depressing.
It is. And that's, I think about when I was a kid, I didn't have a lot of things that were pulling me to the inside. There weren't the computers, there weren't the video games and the sedentary lifestyle. So now now what we've done is we've tightened up our homes. We're spending more time in our homes, and we're
using cheaper products.
Products that are causing health issues with us.
They're not as natural, most of them.
Right. And so how it's affecting our children is that, so when you have an expectant mom that has a fetus in the belly, or a newborn, or say a toddler, there's a certain point in our life where we start getting a blood-brain barrier. And what the blood-brain barrier is that's what actually is the barrier to keep toxins from getting into our neurological system. And infants and newborns, they don't have this. And while they're in the mother, if the mother's ingesting chemicals of some sort, it's a direct feed into the fetus. And that's where we're starting to see a lot of health issues with children. And some of this is in direct correlation to what kids were exposed to in the womb or as a child. And this is where the new lead paint, the EPA lead paint rule is coming into effect as to how we have to deal with lead paint. Because you think about a kid who doesn't walk yet, he's crawling across the floor, putting toys and
licking the walls, everything.
Yeah, and it's direct correlation between that lead that they're ingesting and what's getting into their neurological system.
And lead paint seems like kind of an obvious one. It's one that we hear about a lot. But are there other kind of problems in an unhealthy home that do lead for sickness with mothers and children?
Yeah, so formaldehyde, urea formaldehyde is another one, and we find that in many products. It's used in all kinds of binders for finishes, furniture, flooring, just pretty much it's widely used.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say as far as
urea formaldehyde, which is a term that went way over my head.
Yeah, one of the other things is phthalates too for little boys.
What's a phthalate?
So phthalates are what is put off by a vinyl.
Okay.
So if you have like a vinyl shower curtain or a vinyl flooring, so that is that starts getting into hormone issues with little boys.
My gosh.
So as you think about, as I was learning all this stuff, and I had a 1-year-old when I was starting to learn this stuff, and it was blowing my mind.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
Well, and you made such a good point that I didn't even think about before, is how much more time people do spend indoors because we have so many more reasons to be drawn indoors, to where, that combination of that and with, cheaper products that homes are being made out of, it's kind of logical, but you don't even think about it.
Right.
And I'm sure a lot of people like me, when I first heard about this, are kind of shocked and are like, well, what do we do? How am I, supposed to be healthier in my home? So, maybe you can give us a couple quick things, what homeowners can do to make sure that they're choosing healthier products, A, if they're building a house or going to buy a new house, or B, going to be remodeling.
Yeah. I think one of the best things that they can do is really educate themselves and find somebody, if they don't know, find somebody
Ask for help.
Find somebody who can help them. And, there's some great resources out on the internet now. Some of those being the Pharos Project, which is, they've gone through for many years now, and they're analyzing products that are put out on the market, and it will tell you what's in the product, something that you might not get from the manufacturer. And one of the most important things, I think, is if a homeowner is looking for these things, is they're going to a third-party verifier and not using a first or second party verifier, because they're going to have some sort of potential for corporate intervention.
Okay.
So having the outside view on it is really good idea.
But even as you said earlier, there's just so much information on the internet that I think people can get a little bit lost. It seems like a good place to start, but you do a lot of things in terms of being involved in communities and doing open houses for projects and even just educating people and consulting, correct?
Yeah, and in fact, when we have an open house on a project, usually we try to make sure it's kind of an interesting project so that we can really educate the homeowners as they're walking through and give them an idea of what it could look like or what products were installed and why they were installed.
Mm-hmm. And I think probably it does become more important when you do have children. Like I live in an older home and I don't really think about how it affects me, and I'm fine. But once you do have kids, like you said, making sure our next generation is safe, I think it does then become more of a concern and a point to take action.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, I want to say thank you for joining us. You'll be back for a roundtable in a few minutes here. But again, that was Paul Kocharhook, owner of Pathway Design and Construction. And you can find a link to his website if you have any questions for him on our Facebook page. And again, that's facebook.com/Brashenomics. When we come back, we're going to bring everybody back on the microphones and talk more about helping people and why it is so hard to ask for help. This is Heather Moore. You're listening to Brashenomics. We'll be right back.